Cooper to Cleveland. What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL free agency reaction. Amari Cooper has been traded to the Cleveland Browns, and in this video, I'm going to break it down from both sides of the story. The Browns, they needed a number one wide receiver. They've been missing one since they moved on from Odell Beckham Jr. They have found one, Amari Cooper. Now, a lot of Cowboys fans are upset with the compensation. So I got to discuss whether or not this was a good trade for Dallas to get rid of Amari Cooper and why the Cowboys decided to do this. So before I discuss and break down and analyze this trade, make sure that you do spike that like button. Of course, don't forget to spike the notification bell as well, so you are notified when the latest video drops. I'm reacting to everything this free agency on this channel, so make sure that you spike that notification bell to get as many of my uploads as possible. Also, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this move. Cooper to Cleveland. Do you love it for the Browns? Do you hate it for the Cowboys? Or do you like that the Cowboys got rid of Cooper and moved forward and moved on? Now, let's begin with the compensation from my guy, Adam Schefter. Now, I will say this about Adam Schefter, okay? For some reason, he had me blocked. I don't know why, but we're good. We worked it out, okay? We worked it out just as the Cowboys and the Browns worked out this trade. So the Cowboys finalized the trade to send Amari Cooper and a 6th round pick to the Cleveland Browns for a 2022 5th round pick and a 6th round pick. All of these picks, by the way, are for 2022 as far as I understand it. So the official compensation and the official deal is this. Amari Cooper and a 6th. The Cowboys get a 5th and a 6th. So that's the swap for the Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns. So many of you are probably saying, yo, Mitch, why did the Cowboys just give up a wide receiver of the quality of this man, Amari Cooper, for that? Like, what are the cowgirls thinking is probably what you're saying. And for me, I got to discuss that first. Okay, so why did this happen? Because why would you trade a wide receiver that's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons? He's a Pro Bowler. He's known to be one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's only 27 years old. He is a dynamic force when he is healthy. Well, why did they do this? Okay, so let's start with this. They wanted to be able to retain Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson and Dalton Schultz. And if they were to keep Amari Cooper, they probably would have lost Schultz and Michael Gallup and maybe Wilson, right? So they basically saw two avenues, two roads to follow. Do we keep Amari Cooper and pair him up with CeeDee Lamb? Or do we keep these three other players? And that was essentially the decision that the Cowboys made, as far as I understand it. And it makes sense, because they don't have a lot of cap space. They needed to maneuver this contract. And this is why this is the compensation. You know, a lot of people are going to be like, yo, why would you trade Amari Cooper for this? Like, it makes no sense. Well, there's a couple things here. So first, it's more about the money. It's more about getting rid of the contract, getting rid of the money. It's more about that. You know, think back to the Stafford and Jared Goff trade, right? The big reason Stafford didn't go for more picks is because they had to trade Jared Goff's contract. And that was part of the compensation, to get rid of that money. Very important for NFL teams to have that financial ability to maneuver their cap space. And Amari Cooper had a big contract, $20 million a year, basically. So to get rid of that money is now going to allow financial just flexibility is the word, to maneuver and to make the moves that they want to make. Now, I will say, before I get to Cooper, the player, and all this stuff and where he fits in Cleveland, I think this all stems from Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, I understand that Cowboys fans love this guy. But let's be honest here. If you don't have Zeke on the contract that he's on and Tony Pollard is your back or whatever, you do not have to make this move, in my opinion. I think you have enough flexibility cap-wise if you're not tied down to this running back who at this point is overrated, I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. If Zeke does not make this money, you're able to keep all your pieces. And that is something that I think this stems from, because the Cowboys have made some very bad decisions when it comes to re-signing their own players. The Cowboys are very good at drafting. The Cowboys are pretty good in free agency. They can build a roster. They have one of the most talented rosters, there's no doubt. But they're not very good when that contract comes up for their own guy at saying, should we keep this guy or should we let him walk? And it's the exact opposite for me, from my perspective as a Patriots fan, because I am just painfully accepted the business of the NFL. I buy a jersey and then the guy walks out the door, right? And that's going to happen with J.C. Jackson for me this year. So it's just another player along that line. But the Cowboys are the exact opposite. They just pay every guy that comes to the door. So I feel like the Cowboys need to, moving forward, and this is a big, big, big lesson for them. They've got to understand who to pay and who not to pay. And I think paying Amari Cooper wasn't a bad decision. Now, paying what they paid might have been a bad decision because I think it's a little bit too much money, but that's definitely a lesson to take forward. Now, for the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland gets Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, this past season in 2021, did not have his best year, okay? Amari Cooper had one of his worst seasons of his career, to be quite honest with you, and it was a good season for most receivers, right? 2 100-yard games in 2021 is not very good. It's not usually what Amari Cooper is producing. But he did have 8 games with 5+ catches, okay? He had 68 catches, 865 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I will say this about Amari Cooper. He is pretty consistently available, right? 15 games 3 years ago, 16 games last year, and 15 games this year, right? Last year was 17-game schedule, so he missed more games last year than he typically does. But for the most part, he's available and he plays. Now, there's a difference between being available and then also being motivated to play and then also being a little bit injured. So Cooper has dealt with many seasons throughout his career and spurts where he's dealing with some sort of injury, and that clearly hinders his play. We've seen it with like hamstrings and things like that, which definitely can hinder a wide receiver's play, from acceleration to, change of direction, and just worrying about your hamstring constantly is a big deal. But Amari Cooper kind of deals with that stuff all the time, and he plays through it. So you give him credit for that. But there is something to say about Amari Cooper when it comes to, he's a phenomenal talent. Like, if you were to just say who are the 10 most talented wide receivers in the NFL from a hands perspective, a route running perspective, a speed perspective, everything you're looking for in a number one receiver, a guy that can stretch the field, a guy that can separate, a guy that can run all the routes, Amari Cooper's in that conversation. And he's not quite, when they traded for Odell, like what Odell was, which was like a top 3 receiver in the NFL. But he's a number 1 receiver. If you were to list the top 32 receivers, he's in that conversation. He's probably closer to the top 20, 25, right? In my opinion. Some people might put him in the top 10. I think that's too far. And this is why. Okay, Amari Cooper, to me, has become a little bit overrated. And the reason I say that is, my dad's a Cowboys fan, and he's not a big fan of Amari Cooper, and I've always kind of fought back on that. I'm like, just look at this guy's talent, the way he runs routes, like, he's a really talented player. But there's a difference between being talented and then constantly being productive and consistently being able to show up for your team in the biggest moments, in the biggest situations. And this is a problem I've had with Amari Cooper. A lot of times he doesn't play big in the biggest moments. He doesn't come through in the biggest games. And we've seen that more now than ever lately with Amari Cooper. Did you hear his name in the Niners game? He barely did anything, right? In the big moments on the road, I know Skip Bayless constantly says this. It's true. Like, he thrives in a dome environment. He thrives in an indoor environment. Has been a little bit less productive on the road in a cold environment. That's something I was scared about with the Patriots potentially attaining him. Cleveland's a different situation. Cleveland is a lot different from Dallas. I am very intrigued to see how this works out. He had a good rapport with Dak Prescott. We'll have to see how that rapport works out with Baker. Now, I will say with Cooper, he'll be the true, pure number one there. There's no question. So maybe that will help him and gain his confidence, because Cooper is very big on confidence. When he's confident, he's good. When he's not confident, he's not great. He's not one of those guys that can maintain a level of confidence. He's kind of fragile. And I've seen that both in terms of his toughness, his willing to compete and play, and also just that want to, that drive. He doesn't have that. And as talented as he is, there's something missing with him. And that's why I believe he was traded from the Raiders, and now he's been traded from the Cowboys. Teams see that, right? And I do believe his name brand is a little bit higher than his, actual value. Right? So Amari Cooper is extremely talented, and I hope he works out. I like him as a player. I just feel like there's something missing with him. Just a little bit. And I'm intrigued to see how he works with Cleveland. If I were to guess, and I'm honest with you guys, like, this is my job. I'm honest with you guys. I don't know if this is going to work out. And the reason I say that is, if Baker Mayfield is the quarterback, I'm not sure this is going to be a home run. Like, on paper, this is a good move. Like, so you got to separate what I think's going to happen, prediction, and then also the process. So the process of the move is wise by the Browns. I think it's a good trade. You trade a 5th and a 6th round pick for a number one receiver. Receivers are very valuable in today's day and age. You didn't have a receiver that's capable like this guy is, and that was your biggest need on your roster. So all of that makes sense. But I'm not sure Cooper's the best fit for Cleveland. I'm not sure Cleveland, like Baker Mayfield and Amari Cooper, are going to be the best combination. Cooper's really good, but he does remind me a little bit of the skill set of what you had in Odell Beckham Jr. Very good route runner, a little bit on the smaller side, I would say. Speed, good down the field, separates. But I will say that Cooper is kind of more like timing and based, like, strict in his routes, while Odell kind of freelances a little bit more. But they are fairly similar players, and I think that's why the Browns were attracted to both of these players. And their situations were quite similar in terms of teams were looking to trade them. You're going to take on the contract, and the Browns were able to do that. I do think it's a lot of money for this type of guy. I think he's a really good player, but I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's really worth what he's getting. So we'll see what happens with the contract, but you could take it on for the short term. We'll see how it develops in the long term. So this is a very interesting move. Now, Amari Cooper, how he's going to be utilized in this offense with Stefanski, I would assume a lot like, a Stephon Diggs was in Minnesota or an Odell was in Cleveland. He's going to be the primary downfield receiver, as well as the guy that works the middle intermediate routes. They might have to look for a guy like the next Jarvis Landry to be that slot receiver, but Amari Cooper has the versatility to play on the outside or the inside. He played 443 snaps out wide and 173 in the slot, according to Pro Football Focus. But like I said, this was his worst statistical season since 2017. Now, I wouldn't be too worried about that just because he is only 27 and he will now be the number one, when this was his first year not being a number one in quite some time, because CeeDee Lamb kind of overtook him on the depth chart there in Dallas. And that's another reason why Dallas was willing to make this move. I think if they don't have CeeDee Lamb in that building, they're a little bit more nervous to get rid of the constant, reliable go-to guy for Dak Prescott. But CeeDee Lamb kind of became that guy for Dak this year, and Cooper took a back seat. Cooper kind of more became the big play guy, and now Cooper's going to go back to being that role as the number one guy. There was also some sources of friction in that building with Dak and Cooper. I'm not sure how true those stories are, so I'm not really going to speak to that, but there could also be something there as well. So this is a very fascinating move. I don't think it's going to be a home run for Cleveland, but I do think the process, which is what I have to evaluate here, is a good process for Cleveland. It's a great process for Cleveland. Undeniably, a wide receiver of this talent should at least go for a first-round pick, and we've seen that in the past. But it's the things that can't be measured that you don't know until he gets into your building if it's going to work or not. And we'll see if it does. And we'll see if Baker's even the future. You guys let me know, Browns fans, what you think. Is this going to be the spark that Baker needs, this receiver that Baker needs to trust? Because he didn't have that last year. And he dealt with a lot of injuries last year. So this is a big upcoming season for Baker now that he has a number one target and now that he'll be healthier entering the next season. The Browns as a football team are very talented, and they continue to do a good job in the front office of filling their needs and holes. And they don't have many on their roster. They're a very talented roster. I do think you look at them as a potential playoff team next year, and they should make their way back to the playoffs. I was extremely high on them last year, and I've definitely been soured due to their performance this past season, but they have all the makings of a team that can compete for the division crown and can compete for the playoffs. And if they get a good Baker and a good Cooper, then they'll be dangerous. But I'm just not sure if Cooper is that wide receiver you want in January with the game on the line. I just have to be honest. And that's where I've soured on Cooper, as talented as he is. For Dallas, you're probably looking at a team now that CeeDee Lamb takes the forefront. Cedric Wilson becomes the number 3 now. He played a lot in the slot. Michael Gallup fills the Amari Cooper perimeter role as long as he can stay healthy. Dalton Schultz is your tight end. We'll see what happens with Zeke. But they also have to deal with questions with Collins at right tackle and how they're going to deal with that. Looks like they might move on from him. And defensively, maybe they want to get some cap space to maybe sign a guy like Bobby Wagner or sign a safety or sign a corner. So I'm really intrigued to see what the Browns do to continue to help Baker, or if they try to move from Baker, because there have been rumors about Watson as well as a dark horse team. And then the Cowboys, are they going to look to add to their defense? How are they going to deal with this cap situation and maintain their relevance as a contender in this conference? Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of this Cooper trade. I think it's a very wise process, but I'm not sure it's going to lead to great results. And for Dallas, I think it was the correct decision to trade him, but I'm just not sure if the compensation was necessarily worth it, but time will tell. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. Don't forget to Gronk spike that like button, Gronk spike the notification bell, and let me know in the comments your thoughts. Peace.